Hi again, this presentation is going to cover growth hormone and insulin-like growth factors. This is for Bio 515 Human Physiology 1 with Dr. Renee Christopher at Grand Canyon University. What is growth hormone? What are insulin-like growth factors? Growth hormone is also known as somatotropin, somato meaning body and tropin meaning nourish. And while there are other factors affecting growth, such as diet, stress levels, concentrations of other growth-related hormones, such as the sex hormones and genetic predisposition, this hormone plays a major role in growth in children and maintenance of tissues in adulthood. Insulin-like growth factors, there are two of them, are very similar in structure to insulin, hence the name, but these factors are products of growth hormone precursor molecules. Growth hormone is produced by the anterior pituitary, where it travels both systemically and into the liver, where it initiates the production of insulin-like growth factor 1, which then goes on to promote growth in bone and other soft tissues. Insulin-like growth factor 2 plays a major role in embryonic development, especially in the formation of body tubes. However, its role in adulthood is largely still unknown, except for the fact that its misregulation is suspected in many geriatric illnesses. So this presentation will focus mainly on growth hormone and insulin-like growth factor 1, though I will touch on IGF2 here and there. In the next few slides, I'm going to discuss where these hormones are produced specifically in the body, what tissues they target, and how they target them, as well as feedback mechanisms to control GH and IGF levels, the consequences of hypersecretion and hyposecretion, and I will finish with some practical ways to maintain healthy growth hormone levels as we age. All right, so like most other endocrine hormones, there are many variables that affect the production of growth hormone. I'm going to start with the production of growth hormone, which actually begins in the hypothalamus, which is there, where a tropic hormone called growth hormone releasing hormone or GHRH is first released in a special venous system called the hypothalamic hypophyseal portal system. From here, GHRH signals the anterior pituitary to produce growth hormone from specialized cell types called somatotropes that exist solely for the purpose of excreting growth hormone. From the anterior pituitary, growth hormone is released systemically and targets many tissues, but it also heads over to the liver, where it stimulates the production of IGF1. There are two primary feedback mechanisms. There's a long loop feedback mechanism in which the pituitary and the brain, there we go, detect concentrations of IGF1 in the blood, and this is the primary feedback mechanism, and either increases or decreases the production of growth hormone accordingly. And there's also a short loop feedback, which is there, in which concentrations of growth hormone affect the production or inhibition of more growth hormone. These blood concentrations of growth hormone and IGF-1 also have many other contributing factors, such as the rate of conversion or metabolic activation, the magnitude and rate of binding to plasma proteins in the blood, and their rate of removal by inactivation or urine excretion. And to make this even more complex, we have this huge list of external stimulators and inhibitors here on the right. You can see that GHRH is a stimulator, as well as ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone, among others. And if you look down here, we can see somatostatin, which is growth hormone inhibiting hormone, as well as some familiar molecules such as oxytocin and serotonin. I won't read all these aloud, but if you can see that the concentrations of many other compounds also act on that hypothalamus to either stimulate or inhibit growth hormone production. So like most other endocrine feedback mechanisms, there are a whole lot of variables that affect either its production or inhibition in the anterior pituitary. I just want to touch on insulin-like growth factor 2 before proceeding. This IGF is not derived from growth hormone. However, it does play a major role in embryologic development. and not much is known about its effects through most of adulthood. Some research suggests that IGF-2 plays a role in the development of a variety of cancers found in geriatric patients like breast, colon, and lung cancer, as well as cardiovascular disease. After growth hormone is secreted from the anterior pituitary, the systemic growth hormone acts directly on muscle, liver, and adipose tissue. Its effects are primarily metabolic, as it increases blood fatty acid levels when they are low by inducing lipolysis and inhibiting glucose uptake by adipose tissue. It impairs beta cell reuptake in the pancreas, stimulates gluconeogenesis in the liver, and inhibits lipoprotein lipase enzyme. And it also increases free fatty acid oxidation in muscles while lowering glucose uptake. As you can see, these factors all have the propensity to contribute to growth throughout childhood and adolescence, but regardless, they're all necessary metabolic controls, even in adults who have stopped growing. IGF-1, on the other hand, contributes directly to growth in several ways. IGF-1 acts directly on bone, cartilage, and soft tissue by inducing proliferation of epiphyseal cartilage, inhibiting apoptosis, and stimulating protein synthesis in muscle in order to induce hypertrophy. IGF-1 also stimulates osteoblast activity, which enables bone cells to increase in both size and number. So just to compare these two, growth hormones effects and mechanism in children and adults is primarily metabolic, and that it supports growth, but its actions are necessary even when we're not growing. Growth hormone contributes indirectly to growth by controlling metabolic factors. It regulates maintenance of bone tissues and glucose and amino acid levels in blood in adults who are no longer growing. It breaks down triglycerides from adipose tissue and increases blood glucose by decreasing glucose uptake by muscles. It also increases liver glucose and stimulates amino acid uptake and protein synthesis. And it inhibits protein degradation. Insulin like growth factor 1 induces hypertrophy, which is increasing muscle size by favoring synthesis of proteins and inhibiting protein degradation. It favors hyperplasia, which increases the number of muscle cells by stimulating cell division and preventing apoptosis. It stimulates proliferation of epiphyseal cartilage, and it stimulates osteoblast activity. Here we can see the effects of hypersecretion and hyposecretion of growth hormone in humans. On the image here on the far right, you can see the result of hyposecretion in this short man who suffers from a form of dwarfism due to an insufficient supply of growth hormone, and subsequently insulin-like growth factor 1. And next to him is a very tall man who suffers from overproduction or hypersecretion of growth hormone. This is referred to as acromegaly. On the left, you can see an image of the African pygmies next to an average-sized Western male. This population actually has a normal supply of growth hormone, but instead they have an insufficient response to IGF-1 in target tissues. The average height of African pygmies is about 4 foot 6 inches. They have a lower than average lifespan, but otherwise generally maintain good health. So, as I mentioned earlier, we benefit from healthy levels of growth hormone in adulthood. However, growth hormone levels naturally decline as we age, and it's helpful to try and maintain our production of GH to mitigate the negative effects of lower production, such as osteopenia, muscle atrophy, and increased deposition of adipose tissue. The first thing is sleep. While we do secrete growth hormone during the day, our production is 5 times higher at night while we sleep. However, if we do not have adequate sleep, this will negatively affect our GH production. The second factor is a healthy diet, and this seems obvious, but making sure we have enough protein and are not consuming excessive processed sugars will help maintain GH levels. And finally, exercise is important because it lowers both blood sugar and fatty acid levels in the blood, which further increases growth hormone secretion.